Hello class. In this video we're just going to look at a few last settings to get this thing ready for final output through Enscape. This is my Sketchup model. We've already looked at materials and reflections and how to model this in the first place and all those good things. So it's pretty much the final step for our daytime rendering. And there's just a few settings we need to look at, make sure we have set correctly through Enscape. And so we're going to pull up this box here, which is our settings. I'm not going to go through everything here, but there's a couple important ones we do want to look at. The first thing is I'm going to go to atmosphere. And when I was showing earlier that I had the sky being automatically rendering, that's from here. Yours is probably, I think, the default of skybox, so that's what you should be seeing. But if you want to play around with anything, you can try some other things here. You can try fog, all these other settings. If you don't want any automatic background, it's just the white background would be how you get there. Now make sure if you haven't change your default, this should be at 100%, but your sun brightness is going to be needed because I'm going to show you how to do shadows or just adjust your shadows in a moment as needed. So make sure your sun is on so you can get shadows. So those settings, the skybox and the sun, is very important. Also, what I want you to do is come over to your resolution and change it to Ultra HD to sort of get the highest quality default setting. We can see the aspect ratio, the pixels here, 3840 by 2160. It's not a huge file, but it's good enough for this assignment. Certainly, if you want to do a higher quality one, you could always go to custom and raise those numbers as needed. Now, there are a few other settings in here that you might experiment with over time or over your image. A couple interesting ones we don't need to do for this assignment. We might play with later on in the project, or not project, but a semester when we're looking at sort of more stylistic drawings. You can actually turn your outlines on your drawing through this toggle here, and you can actually change how it's rendered through here, whether it's going to be like all white or not. So I'll talk about how those might be useful in a different assignment, but I do like those features here. Again, you can play with anything else to see how you might like it. Also, rendering quality I have set to ultra. I guess I should mention that as well. So that's sort of all the settings you need to set up, and then you can close that box once you have that set. The other thing you want to do is you want to make sure you have your shadows on. And I turned on my shadows in SketchUp just to get a good time of day for me for this particular view that I'm taking right now. You can set your view however you want. I'm not saying this is a great view, it's just one that I have. If you want to make sure, again, Enscape is matching your view, you want to make sure this toggle is set. So I've turned on my shadows just so I could adjust my shadows here pretty easily in SketchUp. That allows me to see the time of day that I think the shadows would work for. So I'm going with approximately 1:30, and approximation is sort of all you need. And when I go to Enscape, we can see that my shadows are on and my sun is on. And right now, because I've done this, it's pretty much matching. Yours might not be matching, but the shadows in Enscape are separate from the shadows sort of in SketchUp, and so you have control. And if you notice, I can control the view as well, but I usually like to control the view in SketchUp. That's why I've toggled the button. So all these things tell you how to do that if you need to make adjustments to your view. And then the shadows is basically here, time of day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard and use my right-click button. And you can see as I sort of push up and down, if you notice on the right-hand corner of my screen, there's a little sun that as I go in one direction, it starts to go up, and as I push up, it starts to go down, and I can make bigger movements. But you can also see the shadows are changing on the screen as well. They get longer and shorter, and I'm just playing with a minor time difference here, but you could go from all the way in the morning through the afternoon to nighttime where the sun actually goes away, and then you can let go when you're set. You'll notice the time was in sort of military time, so that's just so you know whether it's AM or PM. So adjust the shadows to get a good shadow quality, and then once you do that, you'll basically be ready to export. And so to do that, I got to jump back into SketchUp really quick, and I just have to hit the export button, which is here, or the render image button. So I'm going to hit render image. I'm going to find a place to save it. I'll save it onto my desktop, and then we're just going to wait. It's going to take just a tiny bit amount of time. It might pause before your Enscape comes back up. I just came here. You don't necessarily have to, but I came here to see this bar because it's going to fill up all the way red when it's done, and we can just sit here and wait a few minutes. I'll just say, I've shown you the very basics of all these concepts. What I want you to do is make this drawing as good as you possibly can. I'm not saying I have the best shadows. I'm not saying I have the best background sky. I'm not saying I've done every piece of work I need to do to materials or added all the assets, scale figures, trees, etc. that I need to this image. I did enough to get you started. What I want you guys to do is make as good of drawing as you can through using these tools. And again, we are going to make a daytime image, and shortly here in the future, we'll go over how to make evening or nighttime rendering. So that's it. The rendering's done. We want to take a look at it. I'll just minimize all this stuff. Actually, that's an old one I have there. So I'll just open up the latest one that I just rendered. And there we go. There is the rendering with shadows on. It's obviously pretty simple to do through Enscape, yet it's a lot higher quality of a rendering than what Sketchup does alone. For this assignment, this will be what the final output is. As we sort of get more advanced and start tying things together, we could definitely do a lot of enhancements to this by also incorporating our Photoshop and Illustrator tools on top of this. So good luck making this rendering, and I'll see you in the next video.